Good afternoon and welcome to the Caribbean Court of Justice. This special sitting is convened to mark the occasion of the retirement of the Honourable Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess, Judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice. The members of the bench are the Honourable Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders, President and Presiding Judge, the Honourable Mr. Justice Winston Anderson, the Honourable Madam Justice Rajnath Lee, the Honourable Mr. Justice Dennis Barrow, the Honourable Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess, the Honourable Mr. Justice Peter Jamada, the Honourable Madam Justice Chantal Ononewu, the Honourable Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, ORTT, Chief Justice of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honourable Mr. Justice Leslie Haynes, Chief Justice of Barbados.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Registrar. My fellow judges of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Honourable Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, Honourable Mr. Justice Leslie Haynes, the Right Honourable Sir Dennis Byron, the Honourable Mr. Justice Rawson Nelson, Ms. Lisa Showman, General Counsel, distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, chairs of commissions and superior courts of record, commissioners of the Regional Judicial and Legal Services Commission, honorary consuls, members of academia, presidents of bar associations, members of the legal fraternity, family and friends of Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess, Registrar of the Caribbean Court of Justice, the staff of the Caribbean Court of Justice, ladies and gentlemen. Now, first of all, I want to make an order that no one else need recite the list of protocol. Pleasant afternoon to you all. As you know, my voice is not so good. But I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone to this afternoon's proceedings as we pay tribute to the Honourable Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess. Special welcome is extended to those who have traveled to be here in person to share in this occasion. Today we celebrate the 50 years of service to law, to legal education, and to our Caribbean jurisprudence that have been given by my friend and colleague, Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess. In particular, on this occasion, we honor the last 6 years of that illustrious service, which was spent as a judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Justice Burgess is a proud product of our region's commitment to train its own lawyers, to develop a cadre of legal professionals who would have, in the words of Dr. Nicholas Liverpool, a searching awareness of the realities of conditions in the region, a deep sense of service to the law, their community, and their clients, and yet retain the vision and zeal of law reformers. Justice Burgess was one of those early pioneers who received their legal education at Cave Hill under the tutelage of stalwarts like Professors Keith Patchett and Ralph Carnegie. He is perhaps the finest exemplar of the vision and goals of those who established the Faculty of Law of UWI. His entire adult life has been spent serving the region with distinction. Immediately after obtaining his legal qualifications, Justice Burgess served as an academic in the Faculty of Law at the University of the West Indies. For 35 years, between 1975 and 2010, he played a huge role in developing succeeding generations of Caribbean law students. He was the first graduate of UWI's Faculty of Law to be appointed Dean of that faculty. And so accomplished was he in that post that in the history of the university, he became the longest serving Dean in any of UWI's faculties. He was Dean from 1989 to 1992 and from 1995 to 2004. During the academic year 1992 to 1993, he was also visitor at Oxford University as a senior Commonwealth Academic Fellow. In 2003, the title of Professor of Corporate and Commercial Law was conferred on him by the university, thereby making him the first graduate of UWI's Faculty of Law to be promoted to the rank of professor. Indeed, Justice Burgess's expertise in corporate law and governance is legendary. In 2002, he authored Law of Corporate Receivers and Receiver Managers, and in 2013, he wrote Commonwealth Caribbean Company Law. Both of them texts relied on by students and legal practitioners alike. Last week, I attended virtually the inaugural Susan Folks Goldson Memorial Lecture held in Jamaica in honor of another distinguished academic who specialized in corporate law. I was pleased to hear the keynote speaker, Mr. Michael Hilton, King's Counsel, not only cite several opinions of Justice Burgess, but more importantly, to refer repeatedly to Justice Burgess as the undisputed foremost legal authority on company law in the Caribbean. CCJ was therefore exceedingly fortunate to have him appointed as a judge of this court. His appointment was particularly fortuitous because he joined the court to fill a vacancy created by the retirement of Justice David Hayton, who was himself an expert in company law and in trusts. It was therefore an ideal time for Justice Burgess to ascend to the highest court in the region. Anyone who has straddled the fields of private practice, academia, and judicial office would know that the vantage point from which you make assessments of the law is quite different in each field. When Justice Burgess was appointed to this court, he had by then served in academia for over 30 years, following which he had been on the Court of Appeal of Barbados for 7 years. This naturally meant that he came to us with enormous and varied experiences, which we naturally exploited to the hilt. Andrew was naturally critical to the CCJ maintaining our edge in the resolution of disputes that were centered on corporate and contract law. Of the many opinions he authored at the CCJ, he gave the leading judgment in several which centered around company law disputes. King's Counsel Hilton, in his address last week, quoted fulsomely from many of these judgments in his erudite discourse. This is by no means to suggest that the opinions given by Justice Burgess were confined to corporate law. Far from it. He also delivered stirring opinions in various other areas of the law, both at the Court of Appeal of Barbados and here at the CCJ. At the CCJ, especially as we do not yet receive cases from the two most populous CARICOM states, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago, the judges are disposed and they have the time to immerse themselves in a variety of extrajudicial undertakings. These could run from administrative work to legal or judicial education, or to developing young legal minds in the Caribbean. Justice Burgess has shouldered his fair share of this work. Since joining the court, he has been a key member of the important Financial Oversight Committee. The FOC, which reports to the Commission, the Regional Judicial and Legal Services Commission, exercises strategic oversight in relation to the court's governance, statutory compliance mechanisms, and fiduciary reporting responsibilities so as to ensure and promote financial prudence, and administrative efficiency at the court. Justice Burgess is also the person who assumed responsibility for organizing our annual International Law Moot, where students from law schools and law faculties across the CARICOM region present legal submissions before 3 judges of the court on some knotty, imagined dispute arising under the CSME and the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. The moot, which actually is being held this Thursday and Friday, has grown in stature over the years, and that is a fact that attests to the skills and organizational ability of Justice Burgess. He has also been critical, he's also been very important in our internship program to attract interns to the court. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a brief tribute to Justice Burgess such as this one can never plumb the depths of his contribution to the region over the last 5 decades, and so I have not attempted to do so. Aside from all his many achievements, what impresses me most about my colleague is his calm, his good-naturedness, his ability to approach every situation with a deep sense of mature reflection, his collegiality, his humility, and his deep sense of humor. Throughout it all, Andrew, you have received the love and support of your dear spouse, my former classmate, Sandra, and of course, your dear children. And in turn, you have supported their own endeavors. Caribbean community thanks you, Sandra, for sharing Andrew with us. This court will certainly miss the sterling contribution Justice Burgess has made during his time with us. Andrew, we and the region as a whole owe you a tremendous debt of gratitude. It is a debt which is continually being repaid by the worthy exploits of the hundreds of law students whose lives you have touched, many of whom are now making their own mark as accomplished lawyers in the development of our Caribbean jurisprudence. It is a debt that is being repaid in the guidance we gratefully accept from your teachings and judgments. It is a debt being repaid by the example you have set for us to follow. But it is a debt that will never, ever fully be repaid. I thank you.
Mr. President, fellow judicial colleagues, and other colleagues of the profession, managers and staff of the court, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. This special sitting of the Caribbean Court of Justice pays tribute to our brother, the Honourable Mr. Justice Andrew D. Burgess, who retires from the bench on April 11th, 2025. By any measure, Justice Burgess has been an imposing and enduring figure in regional legal education and in Caribbean jurisprudence. He is highly respected as an outstanding commercial law jurist. A native of Barbados, Justice Burgess was among the second class of LLB students of the nascent UWI Faculty of Law. His brilliance and gift of clarity mandated a career in the teaching of the law at the formative period in the development of West Indian legal education. Most senior practitioners in the region would have first met Professor Burgess, as he then was, as a lecturer at the UWI Cavell Faculty of Law, where he taught courses related mainly to corporate and commercial law. I first met Justice Burgess some 44 years ago, in 1981, when I was a student in his contract law course at Cave Hill. I committed mutiny by publishing a piece in the Student Law Review, edited by now Justice of Appeal Miradine Amor, which contradicted his view on a point of contract law. We have been fast friends ever since. 3 others of my colleagues sitting currently on the CCJ bench, that is, a majority of the CCJ bench, were also taught by Justice Burgess. So deeply admired and respected a professor and colleague was Justice Burgess that, as you heard earlier, he went on to become the Dean of the Faculty of Law, making him the first UWI graduate to be appointed a professor and serve as Dean. Indeed, again, as you heard earlier, he became the longest serving dean in the history of the law faculty, a total of 12 years, from 1989 to 1992 and 1995 to 2004. As Dean, Justice Burgess was, among many other things, the founder of the Caribbean Commercial Law Workshop Series and the Caribbean Law Review publication, 2 enduring flagship activities. For the younger members of the profession, their introduction to Justice Burgess would most likely have been as a published author. Justice Burgess has published 2 seminal texts, The Law of Corporate Receivers and Receiver Managers, 2002, and Commonwealth Caribbean Company Law, 2013. That latter text traces the dramatic changes in company law that occurred in the region in the 25-year period prior to its publication, while analyzing in a nuanced manner the differences in legislation across the various countries of the region. 12 years after its publication, the text remains indispensable literature for students of company law in the Caribbean, and arguably the greatest academic contribution to date on the topic. Professor Burgess departed academia in August 2010 when he was appointed Justice of Appeal in the Court of Appeal of Barbados, where he served for 9 years. Justice of Appeal Burgess sat on 109 cases and authored 32 judgments. That achievement becomes even more impressive when one recognizes that for 5 of the years he served as a Justice of Appeal, Justice Burgess concurrently served as a judge on the 7-member panel of the World Bank Administrative Tribunal from 2013 to 2018, being elected in 2017 to serve as Vice President of that tribunal. This, in addition to his earlier service as judge of the Inter-American Development Bank's Administrative Tribunal in Washington, D.C., where he served in the roles of Vice President and President. The contribution of Burgess, J.A., as he then was, to the jurisprudence of the Court of Appeal in Barbados has been significant and lasting. The case of CGI Consumers Guarantee Insurance Company Limited and Trident Insurance Company Limited, 2014, was described by the late Jefferson Cumberbatch, J.A., another of Justice Burgess's students, as being, quote, generally regarded as the locus classicus of the elements of the interest of justice, end quote, in the context of application for an extension of the time within which a prospective appellant may file and serve a notice of appeal. Justice Burgess was sworn in as a judge of this court on January 18, 2019, and for the last 6 years, it has been an honor, a privilege, and a delight to sit on the CCJ bench with him. As a judge of this court, Justice Burgess sat on 77 cases and wrote 23 judgments, of which 10 were the lead judgments, 9 concurring and 4 dissenting. Of the judgments he authored, time permits me to mention just one. In K International Bank Limited against Rosemore International Corporation, 2023, a cyber fraudster impersonating a bank's customer issued an instruction to the bank through the bank's online banking platform to wire money to a foreign account. The bank believed the instruction came from its customer and honored it. Justice Burgess, in delivering the unanimous judgment of the CCJ, approved and applied the Quincy Care duty of care principle for the first time to online banking transactions in the Caribbean. That principle, derived from the English case of Barclays Bank PLC against Quincy Care, 1992, places a negative duty on a bank to refrain from executing a customer's order if the bank is put on inquiry that its customer may be the subject of a fraud, and a positive duty to do something more than simply not comply with a payment instruction. Justice Burgess also expounded on the threshold a bank would have to cross if it wished to contractually exclude the application of the Quincy Care duty of care, analyzing both the traditional and modern approaches to contractual interpretation. This decision is obviously of seismic importance to the operation of the banking industry in the region. For the past 6 years, Justice Burgess has advocated for this court to remain true to its calling to achieve excellence in the context of its appellate function. Perspective he illustrated earlier this afternoon when he delivered the court's reasons for judgment in Sandy Lane Company Limited against Sonia Eversley, 2025. Justice Burgess has endeared himself to his judicial colleagues and the staff of the court through his learning, his generosity with his time, his courtesy, and his charm. We shall miss him sorely. On a personal level, permit me, please, Justice Burgess, to express my sincere fondness, respect, and appreciation for your life of service to the law and to your students of the law, among whom I will feel forever fortunate to be numbered. Thank you, President.
Honourable President, Chief Justices, Judges, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On the 18th of January 2019, the Honourable Mr. Justice Burgess was sworn in as a judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice. In remarks delivered by Justice Burgess on that happy occasion in his beloved homeland of Barbados, he said, "Let me conclude by underlining that I am aware that the CCJ is perhaps the most important post-independence regional initiative. In my view, the CCJ has so far established itself as an exemplary Caribbean institution. I am also aware that to protect and build upon this is not a task meant for the faint-hearted. All that said, I am confident that with the continued support of Sandra, our boys and their families, my friends, especially at Paragon Tennis Club, and my colleagues, I will meet the demands of the oath which I have sworn this morning. I have to. For, with apologies to Barack Obama, the CCJ is the dream of our mothers and fathers. My brother, Justice Burgess, I say with respect that you have successfully met the demands of the oath you took that day, and you have done so with great dignity and integrity and with commitment to the office you undertook. Allow me, please, to describe my brother, Justice Burgess, as a scholar and a gentleman. As to his scholarship, I fondly recall his fine judgment in Blemont Rights Investment against Cayman Sanka, case from Guyana. His treatment of innominate terms and adoption of the modern objective and contextual approach to contractual interpretation. He wrote another fine judgment in Apsara Restaurants against Guardian General, where he brilliantly analyzed the pan-Atlantic decision of the House of Lords. His dissent and opinion in James Fields against the state from Barbados is also worthy of mention. Many a law student judge will read your discussion of vertical and horizontal stare decisis with great interest. But in addition to being a scholar, Justice Burgess is a true gentleman, courteous, gracious, kind, and respectful of the views of his colleagues, the CCJ staff, and all persons who appeared before the court. It was my distinct pleasure and privilege to have co-authored several judgments with him. His work as chair of the International Law Moot Committee must also be highlighted. He undertook this task with his usual competence, politeness, and reliability. He sought the advice of his colleagues after every moot, with a view to improving the experience of the students. It was under his tenure as chair that valuable amendments were made to the moot rules. He also introduced two important prizes for which the mooters would compete: the Sir Henry Ford Prize for the best oralist and the Justice Jacob Witt Prize for the best written submissions. My brother Andrew, as you move on, may you continue to impact the lives of your colleagues and friends, and those young lawyers and students who will surely turn to you for advice and guidance. May Sandra and the boys enjoy more of your time, and may you continue to enjoy your tennis. My husband David and I wish you God's choicest blessings.
Mr. President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered to say thank you to an exceptional jurist and scholar. The region, as we have heard, has given Justice Burgess that recognition, and in celebrating that recognition, it is fit that we consider that he has gone about reaching those heights in the course of giving and service. In all that we have seen our brother do, it has been done with humility, calm, restraint, kindness, warmth, and generosity of spirit. He was ever so as Dean of the Faculty of Law, Professor of Law, Justice of Appeal, and laterally, Judge of the CCJ. Justice Burgess has towered in reaching those heights. And therefore, life has been good to him in seeing him achieve them. But in all he did, it was done in service of the public interest. So, it may fairly be said, Andrew has been good life to the life of our communities. My brother, we thank you.
What is a plant but the unfolding of a seed, unseen, yet constantly manifesting? Andrew, thank you for being you. Distinguished, diligent, debonair, decent, and demonstrably competent as your character, presence, and many written opinions and works testify. I will always hold dear spending an evening with the casual faculty at your home in Barbados, sitting outside in the open air, savoring your finest beverages, talking and laughing in free abandonment, and being treated, your wonderful wife, Sandra, to a scrumptious home-prepared dinner. Your welcoming hospitality is characteristic of who you truly are, and also of how your lawmaking occurs. I take away from our professional relationship as judges on the CCJ many insights that you have inspired, seeds planted. Time only permits reflection on 4: judicial humility, legal discourse, attention to detail, and courage. Your judicial humility is a foundation for how you have worked with us, not to be mistaken for indecision or indecisiveness. It exemplifies an open-minded and receptive legal mind, a judicial learner's mind that is intrinsically inclined to continuous illumination and that constantly seeks sustainable integrity in the interpretation and application of law. How many times have you counseled me as we have wrestled over legal meanings? Peter, whatever we write must be able to stand the scrutiny of every criticism. Hence, you listened, sought to understand other perspectives and to critique your own. And if confirmed in your views, remained resolute, but if persuaded, willingly changed your opinion. Nicholson and Nicholson. I've been a slow learner in this regard, I must confess, but I can assure you, Andrew, that your example has impacted me indelibly. This virtue of yours, judicial humility, will live on in me and hopefully bear more meaningful fruit. Your love for robust legal discourse has been one of the hallmarks of our relationship at this court. Early morning, midday, afternoon calls, all often lengthy and probing, yet always respectful and empowering. We would disagree and still walk away feeling good. At least I always walked away feeling good. This is truly one of your greatest judicial gifts. The desire for open dialogue in an unrushed manner and with a singular intention to discover relevant meaning and application of law to circumstance. How often have we, together, I may say in solidarity, averted the stern gaze of our colleagues who grew impatient with our seemingly endless need for a little more time, to do a little more research. Maybe too often for others, but for us too, I believe this was profitable time, time well spent in our deliberations. Justice delayed is justice denied, no doubt, but justice rushed can also be justice refused. As you have so often counseled me, we are an apex court, and we need to always try and get it as right as we possibly can. Your attention to detail may at first blush seem to be something typical of any good judge, as it should be, but in you, Andrew, it assumes a special force. I have often been in awe of how painstakingly and caringly you research and reflect on the law and its application to a case. What has struck me, and which I will again always remember and try to practice, is how in your pursuit of attention to detail, you make time and space for deep reflection. This holding space for thoughts to marinate, like a well-seasoned Barbados flying fish before it's fried and served with savory cuckoo, I have come to see as a source of your insights. Legal reflection allowed to gestate for long enough develops into potentially transformative Caribbean jurisprudence. I dare say your shifts to multipolar understandings of the law are the fruit of this deep introspective approach to the law, for example, in Belize International and Gulab Lalshan. In fact, these conjoined characteristics of attention to detail and holding space made every extrajudicial responsibility that you undertook at the court a work of value and excellence. The CCJ law moot, as we have heard, which will take place later this week, being a prime example. Congratulations. Finally, courage. You have always been willing, as per the adage, to do something and be seen to be doing it. The 3 cases already cited are all of your dissenting opinions testify. Having the courage of your convictions is the steel beneath your charming smile. And not enough of us possess this judicial virtue. There is so much more that I can say, but alas, today I cannot plead for a little more time, and I think I may have already exhausted my due allotment. And so, adieu, Andrew. Thank you for planting so many wise seeds, and wishing you every good until.
Justice Burgess, you are deservedly being given your flowers at this special sitting, and it is my pleasure to join my brothers and sister in adding to your impressive bouquet. I was among the hundreds of students who were fortunate to attend the University of the West Indies Cave Hill Law Faculty during Justice Burgess's outstanding tenure as Dean. My admiration of his stellar stewardship of the law faculty only grew in our interactions when I first served as a law lecturer teaching criminal law at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. As our president said, our region really owes Justice Burgess an immense debt of gratitude for his decades of exemplary service in legal education. Justice Burgess, it is bittersweet that our time serving together on the bench of the CCJ was so short. Nonetheless, I treasure having had you as a colleague in the first months of my tenure. It was a privilege to work with you on several cases and to observe firsthand your erudition and clarity as an adjudicator, qualities which shine through in your judgments. I have benefited from your wealth of expertise and experience serving on international administrative tribunals. I have witnessed the care you have taken to make the CCJ International Law Moot a meaningful and enriching experience for law students from across the region. The exposure which our students have gained to Caribbean community law and to the court's original jurisdiction will generate tremendous benefits for them and CARICOM for years to come. Like President Saunders, I was reminded of the significance of your contribution to the development of Caribbean jurisprudence in the field of corporate and commercial law when I listened to last week's inaugural Suzanne Folks-Goldson Memorial Lecture. But Justice Burgess's distinction isn't derived solely from his professional accomplishments, but also from his generosity and warmth as a human being. When I first met his administrative officer judicial, Mrs. Candice Simmons Peters, I distinctly recall the fondness with which she spoke of him. Andrew, you have been incredibly generous in your encouragement and support of me, for which I am grateful. My dear brother, I wish you joy and fulfillment in the next chapter of your life with your lovely wife, Sandra, and your family, of course, on the tennis court, and hopefully featuring the next edition of your seminal text on Commonwealth Caribbean Company law. I salute and thank you for your invaluable service and tireless work to improve our region and indeed the world for the benefit of present and future generations.
Honourable President, Chief Justice, judges, distinguished speakers and guests. It's perhaps fortuitous that I've only been allotted 5 minutes because coming at the end of such a long and erudite bench, I've spent the last 45 minutes gutting my speech. And perhaps in good appellate fashion, I should say, I agree. I have very little to add. I can't match the wit or eloquence, but what I do have to say is heartfelt. I really am honored to bring remarks as we gather to celebrate the remarkable career and invaluable contributions of my brother, the Honourable Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess. Occasions such as these evoke a mix of emotions: gratitude for the years of dedicated service, admiration for an outstanding judicial career, and a hint of sadness as we bid farewell to a distinguished colleague. For my part, I also feel a deep sense of privilege to be part of this moment of recognition. The Honourable Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess has long been recognized for his sharp intellect, profound legal acumen, and unwavering dedication to justice. His judicial opinions and legal reasoning display a depth of thought and wisdom that has left a lasting impact on both our regional jurisprudence and the broader regional and international legal community. His contributions are not confined to the CCJ bench, but he has shaped legal thought, mentored students and practitioners, and carried the torch of Caribbean judicial excellence with distinction and grace. Others will have spoken about his judgments this afternoon, but I would argue that his contribution to Caribbean legal education is at least as great or greater. We have already been reminded that he was the first youth-educated Dean of the Faculty of Law at Cave Hill. But what should not go unnoticed is his contribution and the energy that he devoted to maintaining and enhancing the Faculty of Law at Cave Hill, even at a time when other UE campuses were establishing their own law faculties. He kept Cave Hill relevant. He enhanced its legacy as, dare I say it with some apology, the law faculty, among other things, by expanding the postgraduate offerings. It is safe to say that his tenure as lecturer and professor and then dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus played a pivotal role in shaping the current generation of prominent legal minds in the Caribbean. That is not to detract from his distinguished judicial career. As we have heard before coming to the CCJ, he served as a judge on the Barbados Court of Appeal. And although he came to the CCJ relatively late in his career, it is safe to say that his unique blend of experiences and thought has enriched its jurisprudence. Justice Burgess has left an indelible mark on both courts and, by extension, our Caribbean jurisprudence. His influence as well is not confined to our shores, as we have also heard that he has led and served on the World Bank Administrative Tribunal, the Inter-American Development Bank's Administrative Tribunal, and is a respected voice wherever in the world he is part of a legal debate or discussion. Beyond his judicial accomplishments, he is a dedicated author, not just of the two texts which have been mentioned, but numerous articles and publications, particularly in his area of specialty, corporate and commercial jurisprudence. His influence extends far beyond the cases in which he has adjudicated. It is embedded in the very fabric of Caribbean legal scholarship. Leaving all of that aside, however, after 27 years as a judge and 17 of which have been spent as Chief Justice, I am firmly of the view that superior intellect and analytical reasoning are only part of what makes a good judge. One has also to be a good human being, devoid of hubris, possessed of empathy, compassion, humility, and an even temperament. And Justice Burgess ticks all of the boxes. One of the great privileges of serving in a judiciary is the camaraderie which we, particularly as Caribbean judges, share. While I may not know Justice Burgess as intimately as some of my other colleagues, always from my interactions with him, which are consonant with the reports of all who interface with him, there is that consistent theme of a man who is committed to justice, understands the society, or the Caribbean society, and is intent on dispensing justice with the compassion, with the empathy and the humanity that it requires. And so while we take our work seriously, the long hours, the intricate legal challenges, and yes, even the occasional courtroom drama are made all the more manageable by having colleagues like Justice Burgess, who remind us that the pursuit of justice must always be grounded in fairness, balance, patience, and humility and humanity. As he embarks on this new chapter of his life, something unfamiliar to me, which is apparently called retirement, I hope that his judgments will not be confined to things such as family debates, whether crop over is better now or in the old days, or perhaps the best recipe for a Bajan flying fish. Whatever he chooses to do, I trust that he will approach it with the same passion, intellect, and dedication that have defined his career and earned him the respect of colleagues across the region. Justice Burgess, on behalf of the entire bench of Trinidad and Tobago and myself, and with the deepest respect and appreciation, I extend heartfelt thanks, congratulations, and best wishes to you. May the next phase of your journey be as fulfilling, impactful, and dare I say it, just a little bit more relaxed than your life on the bench. I thank you.
Honourable President Saunders, Honourable Judges of the CCJ, Chief Justice Archie, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, staff of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Let me first express my thanks to the Caribbean Court of Justice for providing me with the opportunity to celebrate and honor the career of our most distinguished brother, His Honor Justice Andrew Burgess, whom I also have the distinct pleasure of calling my friend. This moment is particularly memorable for me. Memorable because as a student of the law, I first met Andrew in the academic year 1975 to 76. Professor Ralph Carnegie then lectured the law of contract, and I was fortunate to have Andrew, a disciple of Professor Carnegie, as my tutor. Needless to say, I was converted. And it is fair to say that between Professor Carnegie and his Honor Justice Burgess, they brought out the best in me. Not an easy thing to achieve. In other words, His Honor Justice Andrew Burgess shaped my life in the law. Since then, grandfather time has ensured that we have both exchanged the exuberance of youth, or substantially most of it, for the stability of experience. With Justice Burgess, I am sure that his experience will transition to wisdom, which wisdom he will no doubt share and impart with those who seek his advice. As Chief Justice of Barbados, I must recognize Andrew's enduring commitment to the administration of justice. Firstly, and not necessarily in this order, as an academic, and secondly, as a judicial officer, and in particular, his work as a Justice of Appeal of the Supreme Court of Barbados. As an academic, his impact is felt by the countless students of the law, including myself, who continue to utilize his many academic works. In the practice of law, his decisions are quoted on an almost daily basis. I recall only recently I had the opportunity to refer to his writings on precedent and his decision in the case of 2J's Limited against West Haven Limited. Anyone who has had the opportunity to read any of his decisions, or indeed his academic writings, would appreciate his ability to take the reader through complex legal issues and interpret the law in a meaningful and purposeful way. As a region, and indeed through institutions like the Caribbean Court of Justice, it is for our own jurists to meaningfully present the law to our people in ways that they can understand. In this regard, His Honor Justice Burgess stands tall. We have been incredibly fortunate to witness and learn from Andrew's example of service to the law. Diligence, fairness, and dedication to one's profession, I am finding, are values that remain constant even in today's fast-changing world. In these times of changing standards, we can look to His Honor Justice Burgess as a beacon elucidating the path of best standards and service excellence. I have no doubt that Andrew will not go softly into the wind. I hope very much that that retirement is just another phase for him, and that the profession will continue to benefit from his guidance and scholarship. Indeed, I hope that we will see more publications. Andrew's influence at the judicial level will be missed, but I hope that will only be from the point of view that he's no longer sitting on the bench daily. I want to wish him a retirement filled with joy, health, and new adventures. On behalf of the Judiciary of Barbados and myself, we thank him for his incredible contribution and his dedication to the development of law, both in Barbados and regionally. Louis Armstrong once said that musicians do not retire. They stop when there's no more music in them. I think it would be fair to say that good judges merely shift from one bench to the next. The difference being that in retirement, you can choose who appears before you. In just about 50 years of our friendship, the only example of Andrew's lack of technical ability that I can remember is his susceptibility to the rising ball on the off stump. But that is a story for another time and place. Your Honor, Justice Burgess, thank you for your invaluable contribution to the law of the region. I look forward to your future contributions and increased frequency of our conversations. I thank you.
The Honourable Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Judges of the Caribbean Court of Justice, the Honourable Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, ORTT Chief Justice of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honourable Mr. Justice Leslie Haynes, SC Chief Justice of Barbados, the Right Honourable Sir Dennis Byron, former President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, the Honourable Mr. Justice Ralston Nelson, former Judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Miss Lisa Showman, General Counsel CARICOM, distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, chairs of commissions and superior courts of record, commissioners of the Regional Judicial and Legal Services Commission, honorary consuls, members of academia, presidents of bar associations, members of the legal fraternity, family and friends of Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess, staff of the Caribbean Court of Justice, ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored to be able to offer brief remarks for this special sitting of the Caribbean Court of Justice to mark the retirement of the Honourable Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess and to recognize his sterling service and contributions to the CCJ. I regret being unable to attend this ceremony in person. In reflecting upon what to offer for this afternoon's proceedings, I thought it might be helpful to say a few things about Mr. Justice Burgess's life 2 incarnations ago, when he was Dean at the Faculty of Law of the University of West Indies Cave Hill campus. Justice Burgess holds the honor of being the longest-serving Dean of the Faculty of Law and, when I first met him, represented the core and the history of the Faculty of Law. He knew all of the faculty's procedures and managed our meetings with diplomacy and wit. Persons may not remember, but in the late 1990s, we had some strong personalities at the Faculty of Law. As a result, our faculty board meetings could be interrupted by points of order, strong denunciations, fervent legal and moral arguments, and references to great historical figures and precedents. My fondest memories of the faculty board were watching then Dean Burgess adjudicate points of order based upon some old precedent, usually named after the individual who first made use of it. His eyes would sparkle, and you could see him remember the debates of the past before he adroitly accepted or rejected the particular submission. As you can see, Justice Burgess was preparing for a role on the CCJ from the 1990s or perhaps earlier. Faculty board also provided great lessons to me on strong leadership and personal character. I witnessed Justice Burgess manage many difficult disputes. That said, I remember many times when the faculty was completely divided, and the matter was only resolved when Dean Burgess said with finality, "I detect a consensus," and then shared his position with us all. Justice Burgess will also be remembered at the Cave Hill campus for being the first at many things. He was the first graduate of the Faculty of Law to be our dean. He was one of the originators of the Caribbean Commercial Law Workshop, our flagship yearly conference. He was involved in the Caribbean Law Review from its infancy. As Dean of Law, he loved his life in the faculty. His days were relatively short, from his 10 a.m. arrival to leaving for tennis no later than 3 p.m. But his days were full of activity. He loved interacting with our students and warmly engaged with academic staff. I remember him stopping me on several occasions, usually after I had completed a very difficult task for the faculty, and his saying how happy he was that I and another colleague, Tracy Robinson, had joined the faculty. I was grateful for the recognition, but in reflecting upon this now, I am more grateful that I joined the faculty at a time it was filled with great personalities and chaired by a kind and compassionate Dean of Law. He has served as a model to me in the years after he left the faculty upon his elevation to the bench, particularly when I too served as Dean of Law at Cave Hill. On Justice Burgess's judicial activities, I will leave others to praise his revolutionary corporate and commercial law decisions. As some will know, my area of interest is the CCJ's original jurisdiction, and those judgments, of course, do not have separate or dissenting opinions, and so I cannot fully assess Justice Burgess's contributions to that jurisprudence. I can, however, indicate quite clearly that the CCJ's original jurisdiction owes a very great deal to Justice Burgess, who recognized the importance of regional integration law from the earliest of periods. In 1998, I remember Justice Burgess stopping me to ask whether I could flesh out and teach a new proposed course in Caribbean integration law, for which then Dr. Kathy Ann Brown had set out a mere 6 bullets of a course outline. Justice Burgess, even from that early period, before the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, before the creation of the Caribbean Court of Justice, saw the importance of a regional economic law course for the development of a regional jurisprudence. So, for his firm guidance, for his warmth and compassion, for his ever-present wit, and for pushing me to develop Caribbean integration law and to write about it, I must express my sincere thanks to Justice Burgess. I thank this honorable court for the opportunity to share my memories of this great man. I look forward to the return of this son of the Caribbean soil to Barbados. I thank you.
Greetings and remarks on behalf of Dr. Carla Barnett, the Secretary General of CARICOM, on this solemn occasion of tribute to Justice Andrew Burgess. The Caribbean Community, CARICOM, first conceived as a political union and now meeting its destiny as an economic and social integration movement, has no greater underpinning than the Caribbean Court of Justice. And it is mortals who, like Atlas, uphold that architecture, carrying its weight on their broad intellects, dispensing learned decisions, and also telegraphing, to use an archaic term, their view of what our community must be. Among the current 7 magnificent mortals is Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess, who joined in 2019 after a distinguished career that has been recited so often this afternoon. Not surprisingly, at the University of the West Indies, the alma mater of most of us in this room, Justice Burgess was the first law graduate of the UWI to be appointed a professor and to serve as dean. Mr. Justice Burgess has taught a few generations of lawyers in the Caribbean, including me, and I dare say more than a few others in this room, and those attending virtually. His intellect was always rapier quick, and his classes demanded an alert attendance. One thing was equally sure. More than one student will surely recall that if there was a test match on in Barbados, you need not come to the Burgess lecture for that day, but you better know when it would be rescheduled for. You did not want to miss a morsel of the learning that was dispensed. In fact, I would go out on a limb, sir, and say that in the popular music of students of my generation, you were always broader than Broadway. The depth and breadth of your accomplishments to date are myriad. Senator, counselor, member, and president of 2 distinguished tribunals, member of the RJLSC, and on and on. But it really is the shaping of so many nascent legal minds in our region, which I think will be one of the more lasting testimonials as to the measure of this magnificent mortal. As a judge, to write decisions is to speak, to create jurisprudence, to expand judicial boundaries, but to teach lawyers, that is to be a planetary guide in our judicial universe. And Justice Burgess is a veritable Jupiter among our guides. You didn't miss a Burgess lecture simply because if you did, you would have impoverished your own understanding of the legal galaxy that was unfolding before your tired, sleep-deprived, and befogged student brain. And what Dean Burgess offered was direction in clear and crisp terms. And from guideposts in the legal galaxy, Justice Burgess in 2019 became a guardian of that galaxy for our Caribbean community, riding as what fans of the movies would call one of the Magnificent Seven. Justice Burgess's erudition has served the community well and faithfully in original jurisdiction cases such as the rock hard cement case, dealing with the way in which Secretariat and COTED should handle suspensions, the David Bain case, which continues to instruct deliberations on freedom of movement, the sweet brown sugar matter between Belize and Trinidad, the slippery soap noodles case of DCP and the state of Jamaica, and the multi-party Ellis Richards, Clico, Bico, and other codes against the state of Trinidad. It goes without saying how much we, who have the good fortune to appear before Mr. Justice Burgess, will miss his courteous but incisive probing, his skillfully surgical summaries, and his way of making one aware of the much better view and of one's own inadequacies. He was and still is a consummate and valued teacher at our apex institution of learning and at this apex court. Permit me a short note of my own. I was one of those rather indifferent students at the time who was more interested in the social interactions in the life of law at the faculty. And it was Justice Burgess who inspired me to become a more serious student of the law. So much so that I was one of those who benefited from the policy of coming back to UWI to do a master's program. And I was allowed to create my own mix of expertise and interest, which included law of the sea, the new international economic order, and administrative and constitutional law. Probably one of the craziest mixes anyone had ever thought of, but it worked for me. And it put me on a path that has held me in good stead to now. I'm also happy to know that I followed you on the Inter-American Tribunal, Administrative Tribunal, and like you, I had the fortune to serve as Vice President and President for 2 terms during COVID when nobody else wanted to do it because it was hard slog. But I have absolutely no doubt that the rigor that I learned at the Faculty of Law has contributed towards making me a better lawyer, and I hope a better Caribbean citizen. And that is really, I think, the true testimony to your years of service. It isn't just farewell and Godspeed that we bid you. It is the more formal Roman greeting, Ave Atque Vale, that you so richly deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Sherman Moore.
Mr. President and Judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Chief Justices, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is indeed an honor, pleasure, and privilege for me to have been invited to give brief remarks on the occasion of the retirement of the Honourable Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess from the Caribbean Court of Justice. It was my very pleasant task to welcome Justice Burgess to the Court of Appeal of Barbados in August of 2010 in my capacity as the acting Chief Justice. And when he took the oath of office as a judge of this very esteemed court, the Caribbean Court of Justice, I was again invited to attend and give remarks on his behalf at Government House in Barbados. Justice Burgess's transition from academic life as a professor of law to judicial office was seamless. His approach from the outset was judicial and judicious. His analysis of legal issues was clear, and his opinions were logical. He quickly assimilated the judicial culture of the shared beliefs, values, and behaviors that shape how judges and court staff perform their roles and how cases are handled within our legal system. Justice Burgess's interaction with his brother judges and court staff and his deep respect for judicial polity created an atmosphere of profound collegiality. Justice Burgess contributed greatly to the delivery of justice in the Supreme Court of Barbados, thereby enhancing jurisprudence. From Justice Burgess's academic and judicial record in Barbados, it was clear and certain to me that he would be an asset to the Caribbean Court of Justice and as such a great contributor to Caribbean jurisprudence. His elevation to the Caribbean Court of Justice was a great loss to the Supreme Court of Barbados. But I took comfort in the fact that his judicial talent would be for the greater good of Caribbean jurisprudence from which we all benefit. Justice Burgess possesses a strong personality and an excellent legal mind. As a result, having worked so closely with him in Barbados, I kept in touch with his progress throughout his tenure at the Caribbean Court of Justice. During that time, he made excellent contributions to the work of that court. But in my opinion, his most outstanding contribution was his dissent in the Commission of Police against Stephen Allen, a decision on an appeal from the Court of Appeal of Barbados, in which he delivered an unassailable interpretation of the Sexual Offences Act of Barbados. Justice Burgess now retires, leaving behind him an impressive record of service to the legal profession, both academic and judicial. I will miss his sound, clear, and well-reasoned judgments. My brother Andrew, with the judicial wind still at your back and the judicial sun in your face, go forth and continue your excellent service. Whatever you do henceforth, I wish you well. Mr. President, judges of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Chief Justices, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Honorable Justice Sanders, the judges of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Honorable Judge Burgess, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zakir Hafez. I am the Executive Secretary of the World Bank Administrative Tribunal. I worked with Justice Burgess for 10 years. So in that capacity, I would like to mention few things from my heart, so I don't have a prepared speech. There are four philosophical aspects of his judging or his way of work and his unique qualities that I like to highlight. One is the philosophy I have seen in him about working in a diverse, consisting of multiple of judges. At the World Bank Administrative Tribunal, we have 7 judges coming from 7 different continents of the world. And the question is, how can a judge work in a collegial manner in a diverse tribunal like the World Bank Administrative Tribunal? What I have seen is that when comes to the deliberation of cases, he comes with this philosophy, is that here are my views, but I could be persuaded otherwise. That is the philosophy, the operating module he has worked in our tribunal. That shows that I could be persuaded otherwise, that he comes, of course, with his view, but he's willing to listen to others. He's willing to change his view if more persuasive arguments are presented. And that has worked very well in our World Bank Administrative Tribunal. The second philosophy or unique quality that I have observed working with it closely is that his philosophy in reaching consensus building. Justice Burgess believes, of course, dissenting opinions are allowed, but he believed that in a World Bank Administrative Tribunal, in an international organization, it is important to have unanimous judgment. He believed that unanimous judgments are better, they are fairer, and it reflects and takes into account different perspectives and views from different philosophical views of the judges. So his philosophy in reaching consensus was this, that these are my preferred views, but I could live with other views. That means to achieve consensus, even though something was his preferred view, but his philosophy was, is this reasonable enough for me to live with? And that philosophy, that operating module has been implemented in our tribunal, that when our judges continue to discuss diverse views, they always ask, let's apply Justice Burgess's philosophy, is that is this something, even though it's not our preferred view, can we live with? And that has really helped us to issue unanimous judgment. In our tribunal's history, the tribunal has issued more than 700 judgments, and there has been only one dissenting view, but that actually happened before Justice Burgess joined us. So that shows that his philosophy, his way of working is really working well for our tribunal. The third unique quality I have seen that he is a fierce advocate of the independence of the tribunal. He believes that there is no compromise on the independence of any tribunal or court. There is no semi-independent tribunal. There is no half-independent tribunal. There cannot be any compromise on the independence of a court. While serving as a president of the tribunal, we faced some issues from certain management at the World Bank who wanted to make some changes. And as a president, Justice Burgess believed that that was compromising to certain aspect of the independence of the tribunal. He wrote then a comprehensive memorandum to the highest official at the World Bank, the president of the World Bank, and advocated for issuing a comprehensive operating guidelines for the operation of the World Bank Tribunal. And that resulted for the first time in International Administrative Tribunal that the highest officer of that organization, in our case, the president of the World Bank, issued a essential governing and operating rules of the World Bank Administrative Tribunal. And that document is the first in the history of any international administrative tribunal. And we consider it as our Magna Carta for functional and comprehensive aspects of independence of the tribunal. And the other aspect that he always emphasized, that one of the question in any court or tribunal, okay, does the registrar or executive secretary of the tribunal should also enjoy some independence? He believed, and his philosophy, his famous statement that he made during one of the conversation with the stakeholders, is that the independence of a court starts with the office of registrar or executive secretary. It definitely does not end there, but it starts there. So he believed that the registrar or executive secretary should be in a position of enjoying certain independence, that he or she is not afraid to speak up to executive branch or to the management. So that philosophy, that a comprehensive view of independence of the tribunal is essential, I have witnessed and I have seen how he advocated and made sure that when a court says we are independent, that it does what it says. And finally, one unique quality that I have seen, and I have one of the beneficiaries, is that his true commitment to the professional advancements of the people that work with him. That he really took time to make sure that the people who work under him, who are not at the same ranking as his professional ranking, that their interests, their professional development are taken care of. He took deep care in my own professional development, making sure that I have all the support that needed for my own professional advancement. And that shows a genuine, a person who is genuinely caring for others. So we have a very limited time. These are the 4 qualities that I wanted to speak from my heart. I wish Justice Burgess all the best on his retirement. Sometimes we have spoken about cricket. I know he's very caring about the West Indies team. It is not doing that well. If he decides to be a coach of the West Indies team, I am sure it will do a fantastic job as it did in the past. So Justice Burgess, all the best. Thank you.
Mr. Jeremy.
Your Honor, Mr. Justice Saunders, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Judges of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Your Honor, the Chief Justice of Barbados, Mr. Justice Leslie Haynes, in your counsel, my Lord, the Chief Justice of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Justice Ibarachi, Your Right Honourable Sir Dennis Byron, former President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Your Honor, Mr. Justice, former Judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Ms. Leah Schumann, General Counsel, CARICOM, distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, chairs of commissions and superior courts of records, honorary consuls, members of academia, presidents of bar associations, members of the legal fraternity, family and friends of Mr. Justice Andrew Burgess, staff of the Caribbean Court of Justice, ladies and gentlemen. It is for me a huge honor this afternoon to have been asked to speak a few words on the retirement of Justice Burgess from this court. I've had to check carefully, but I can now say that I have known Justice Burgess for some 39 years, having first met him as a student at the Cave Hill campus of the Faculty of Law in Barbados in 1986. Became instant friends, and throughout my career, which as fate would have it, included a long tenure at the very Faculty of Law, and my time in public life, that bond of friendship, love, and respect has been maintained. I should like to leave those of us who have come this afternoon with some of my own reflections in the few minutes permitted to me on Justice Burgess's scholarship, his judicial strength, and his contribution to our Caribbean nation. As to his scholarship, I need only point to his decades of service to the University of the West Indies and to the Faculty of Law in particular, for more than 30 years. That long service, Justice Burgess added two important texts, one on Commonwealth Caribbean Company law, the other on the law of receivers and receiver managers. He's also written a host of journal articles that he has sown promiscuously throughout the Commonwealth in a number of well-respected law journals. His judicial strength has also been remarkable. Justice Burgess has led the Barbados Court of Appeal in a host of important commercial matters. CIBC versus Gypsy, later reversed in this court, if I might add in my respectful view, in a decision that might well not age, as well as that of the Court of Appeal in Barbados. In Delpeche and the Commissioner of Police, also a decision of this court, which reversed that of the Court of Appeal of Barbados, he delivered a powerful and courageous dissent. In that case, Justice Burgess found himself in a minority of two. But in my respectful view, again, his statement of the orthodox principle on which he held that the corporate veil should be lifted, pierced, is courageous and strongly reasoned. Now, I'm not sure that he's correct. I have expressed my view to him on that. But Justice Burgess could, however, do as he did in Delpeche, was without question courageous. And he took on headfirst the leading decision of Lord Sumption and Prest, who at the time was thought to be the intellectual leader of the UK Supreme Court. Finally, in terms of his contribution to our Caribbean society, all that one can say is that when one reflects on his service in the field of legal education, the fact that under his stewardship, he managed to not just hold together a faculty, which even then was struggling to stay together, the fact that he did all of that for longer than any dean of the faculty was able to do it, and still managed to serve with honor, with humility, with integrity, and without losing his cool. That he did all of that, in my view, reflects on his character as a true Caribbean icon. Of course, the fact that he then added to that service as teacher, scholar, and dean by moving to the bench to serve tirelessly both in the Court of Appeal in Barbados and here at the Caribbean Court of Justice, makes him, in my view, a Caribbean patriot. It is customary to wish a colleague who has served well in retirement good health and Godspeed. But even now, as Justice Burgess continues his service, as I have no doubt that he will, I add my own wish on behalf of those of us who are left to toil, that I trust that in retirement, he will continue to serve for as long and as hard as he has actually worked. Thank you, Justice Burgess. Thank you, Andrew. I shall forever feel privileged to have shared your friendship and collegiality for decades, at home, in Barbados, and in other places.
Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. It is both an honor and a bittersweet moment for me to stand before you today as we celebrate the retirement of someone who has not only been an exceptional leader, but also a mentor and a guide. Justice Burgess, your retirement marks the end of an era, but while it brings a sense of finality, it is also a moment to reflect on the incredible impact you have had on those who had the privilege to work alongside you. As Justice Burgess's assistant for the past 6 years, I've had the privilege of working closely with him and have come to appreciate him as a person who has left a lasting impression on me, both professionally and personally. In his chambers, I have had the privilege of witnessing his legal expertise and wisdom in action. I have seen firsthand how he approaches every case with a meticulous eye for detail, carefully crafting his judgments with thoughtfulness and clarity. Justice Burgess brings a sense of precision and fairness to everything he does, and it is clear that he has an unwavering commitment to justice. The way he balances the weight of each decision, ensuring that every aspect is considered, has been a masterclass in legal thought and professionalism. But what has impressed me just as much is the person behind the robe. Someone whose actions reflect his character, not the title he holds. I have always admired Justice Burgess's integrity, kindness, and respect with which he treats everyone around him. It is not often that you encounter someone who carries the responsibilities of their position with such grace, humility, and understanding. Justice Burgess has shown me that true leadership is not about asserting power or authority or making decisions that are right or fair. It is about understanding the people involved and showing them the dignity and respect that they deserve, lifting others up, empowering them, and leading with kindness. On a personal level, I have come to know him as someone who genuinely cares, not only about the work he does, but about the people he works with. Justice Burgess has taken the time to get to know me beyond the professional role I play, and that speaks volumes about his character. He didn't just see me as his assistant, he treated me like family, and in turn, he became part of mine. It's the little moments that have truly made working with him unforgettable. I remember the times when laughter echoed through the halls when we would have lunch, all three of us, Justice Burgess, Mr. Larrick Young, his judge's aide, and myself, swapping stories about our families and finding comfort in the shared experiences. It was never just about work. It was about the relationship we have built and the camaraderie. And Larrick too can attest to this. There are few people who make such an impression on those they lead, but Justice Burgess did so effortlessly. His kindness, his genuine interest in my well-being, and his unwavering support made this more than just a job. And for that, I am deeply grateful. Retirement is a big change, but I know that the bonds we have formed will not fade with time. Justice Burgess, congratulations on your retirement. May this next phase bring you cherished moments with your family and your loved ones and the relaxation that you truly deserve. I know Mrs. Burgess, Ayo, and Akil and their families have great plans for you. I wish you continued success and fulfillment in all that you do. and may the Almighty continue to enfold you in his grace and favor. Thank you.
Honourable President Saunders, protocol having been so expertly established by your good self, I beg leave to adopt it and to thank all the speakers for extremely kind reflections on my career. Let me begin by saying that I vividly remember the 20th of January 2019. That is the day on which I took an oath before the Almighty and in the presence of the Most Honourable Dame Sandra Mason, who was then the Governor General of Barbados. The oath was that I would faithfully exercise the office of Judge of the CCJ. Today, a little over 6 short years later, here am I addressing you on my retirement from that office. I feel bound to say that my short time at the CCJ could be divided into 2 parts. The first part lasted for about 4 years. In this part, people always seem to treat me as a recent appointment and would ask such probing inquiries as, how are you finding life at the court? Then, almost overnight, in the second part, the interrogatory became, how much longer do you have to go? For those of you who are interested, I think Justice Anderson said it, the answer is just under a month, the 11th of April, 2025. Meantime, mercifully, the President has not assigned me to any duties prior to my retirement date. Notwithstanding the relatively short time, my relatively short time here, it has been a great honor to serve as a member of this court. This is especially so because of what the CCJ represents to me. For me, the CCJ is an amalgam of fundamental aspirations of us Caribbean people. Aspirations aimed at bending the arc of history of the common law towards the development of a truly Caribbean system of law that is respected regionally and internationally. As enunciated in the vision statement of the Caribbean Court of Justice, 4 such aspirations are embraced in the CCJ idea. These are that the CCJ be a leader in providing high-quality justice, be responsive to the challenges of our diverse communities, be innovative, fostering jurisprudence that is reflective of our history, values, and traditions, and consistent with international legal norms, and be inspirational, worthy of the trust and confidence of the people of the region. As you can see, this vision embraces frighteningly lofty ideals indeed. That notwithstanding, I took the oath in the firm belief that the vision of the CCJ mirrors my lifelong career vision, and that the experience which I had been fortunate to gain in pursuing my career vision would have assisted me in attempting to further each and every aspiration enunciated in the vision statement of the CCJ. If that experience failed, I told myself, then I would hazard everything on the promise of the old adage that fortune favors the brave. And was I favored by fortune? As we all know, the CCJ is a relatively new court. It was inaugurated in 2005, a mere 15 years or so prior to my joining. However, under the astute leadership of Presidents Michael de la Bastide, Sir Dennis Byron, and Adrian Saunders, and the dauntless justices who served with them, the court had promptly established itself as a court of excellence. From its earliest decision in Barbados Rediffusion Services Limited and Asha Merchant Danny, through later decisions like Romeo Hall and the Queen and in its appellate jurisdiction, and Shanik Myrie and the state of Barbados in the original jurisdiction, the court demonstrated that it was a thought leader worthy of regional and international respect. And so I consider myself fortunate to have reaped the fruits of the respect which this court had promptly attracted to itself. And I'm grateful for these early outstanding exemplars. When I was appointed to this court, I received a very kind note from my university colleague and good friend, the late Jeff Cumberbatch. He was a founding member of the Regional Judicial and Legal Services Commission, and so he knew the CCJ well. He congratulated me on becoming a member of what he described as the most consequential and collegial court in the history of the Caribbean. I found out that he was right about that. I was welcomed warmly into the team of judges who dedicated themselves to pursuing the lofty ideals of the court. They were, at the time, President Adrian Saunders and Justices Witt, Hayton, Anderson, Rajneeshli, and Barrow. Justice Hayton subsequently retired in 2021, and Justice Witt sadly passed in 2024. Justice Peter Jamadar and Chantal Ono Naivu have replaced them. I have therefore had the fortune to work with and learn from some of the great pioneers of the court, as well as the more recent doyens. To all of my colleagues, past and present, I express my profound thanks for the warmth and comfort that I've always felt as part of this court, and for keeping alive the production of the consequential jurisprudence that Jeff Cumberbatch identified as the court's most important aspiration. As for my judicial work at the court, in the 6 years or so that I have had the privilege and honor of serving as a justice of the Caribbean Court of Justice, I have had the opportunity to sit on upwards of 70 cases in the appellate jurisdiction. These cases include special leave applications as well as actual appeals. I also sat in 6 cases in the original jurisdiction. I'm delighted to say that I've been able to concur with the decision of the court in over 90% of these judgments, many of which are cited by practitioners as precedents in our courts. In less than 10% of these cases I've authored dissenting opinions or opinions concurrent with the decision of the court, but for reasons other than that given by the court. Here, I feel bound to express my profound appreciation of the outstanding generosity of President Saunders and my colleagues in sharing with me their superior CCJ experience, even in those cases where I found it necessary to write a separate opinion. In this regard, I feel compelled to share with you Justice Witt's comment on my separate concurrent opinion in the Guyanese case of Ramsahoy and the Guyana Revenue Authority, 2022 case. In that case, Justice Witt wrote of my opinion at paragraph 31 of his opinion, and I quote, "Having departed from his starting point at Section 5B of the Act. Burgess, JCCJ, in a reasoned and erudite statement of his reasons for decision, has taken us on a scenic tour in the sometimes inhospitable world of tax law, methodically progressing along a winding road from paragraph 38 to paragraph 86. He has guided us through this difficult area of the law in a way that I was able to follow quite comfortably, only to lose him at the very last turn of his reasoning. Talk about killing softly with words. Prior to my appointment to the CCJ, I was a student for 3 years in the Faculty of Law of the University of the West Indies, and later served as an academic in the faculty for 35 years. I was appointed Dean of the Faculty and served in that post from 1982 to 1992, and from 1995 to 2004. In that post, I also served as a member of the University Senate, as a member of the University Council, as a member of the Council of Legal Education, as an observer in the Legal Affairs Committee of CARICOM. During this time, I also served on a number of national and regional committees, including as chairman of the Commission of Inquiry into the law and practices surrounding the diplomatic bar in Trinidad and Tobago. These experiences brought me face to face with my Caribbean brothers and sisters and the challenges of our diverse communities. It is these experiences which I was able to deploy in attempting to contribute to the CCJ's vision of being responsive to the challenges of our diverse communities. In this regard, it would be remiss of me not to thank the successive generations of students, many of whom are present here this afternoon. I thank you for your invaluable contribution to my development as a student of Caribbean jurisprudence. The court has a practice of hiring outstanding, recently qualified lawyers as judicial counsel for the purpose of giving them the experience of working in judges' chambers. I have had the advantage of working with many of them, and I wish to acknowledge the energetic and conscientious contributions of all of them to my judgments. Indeed, I would say that I benefited more from these articulate, clever, and committed young professionals than they ever did from me. Many of them have gone on to make significant contributions to the law, public administration, and business. I'm proud to be able to say that they served me, and I thank them, all of them, for what they have given me. Each has my best wishes for the future. It has frequently been said, but there's no more solid truism, in my view, than that the quality of the work of the court depends largely on the hard work, integrity, and professionalism of those who appear before it. It has been my experience that this court has been well served by the bar. In my time here, I have been greatly assisted by the very high quality advocacy of the bar. I wish to express my sincere thanks to the bar for this. Throughout my time at the court, I have been assisted by my administrative officer, judicial, as they call her, AOJ, Candice Simmons-Peters, and by my judge's aide, Merrick Young, two persons to whom I owe very much. I shall not burden this brief address with an elaboration of the contribution which they have made to the discharge of my duties as a judge, but you may take it from me that it was monumental. My family and I owe a lot to the contributions of Candice and Larry, and I thank them for making my life as a CCJ judge the agreeable experience that it has been. On a similar note, I would like to express my appreciation to the unfailingly friendly and helpful security and facilities management personnel. I'm grateful to the court for providing opportunities to serve in other capacities in the court. During the time here, I served as a director of the Caribbean Academy for Law, chair of the International Law Committee, chair of the Judicial Council and Internship Committee, director of the Venice Commission, member of the Rules Committee, member of the Financial Oversight Committee, and member of the 20th Anniversary Publication Committee. It is working on these committees that I was able to witness how very hard staff in the court work to ensure that the court is a court of excellence. Registrar Mrs. Gabrielle Figueroa Jones and her first-rate team of Deputy Registrar Mrs. Giselle Thomas Roberts, departmental managers and their staff. Their experience in the performance of vital judicial functions and in many other areas is essential to the functioning of the court. The reputation of this court for courteous and efficient service to the public and the legal profession depends as much on our registrars and our registry staff as it does on judges. They do us proud. And so what do I plan to do in retirement? My major plan in retirement is to deploy my career experience to attempt to write on Commonwealth Caribbean jurisprudence. Starting on Monday, I propose to complete with John Jeremy the revision of my text, Commonwealth Caribbean Company Law. This book was published in 2013 and is begging for a second edition. My workload in the Court of Appeal of Barbados and then in the CCJ has meant that I could not find the time for such a revision. My retirement, I hope, will allow me time to dedicate to the revision of this book. On completion of this revision, I propose to work with my daughter-in-law, Ashley Willoughby Burgess, on updating and revising my other texts, Corporate Receivers and Receiver Managers. This book was published in 2003, and like my other book, is ripe for a second edition. Even as I work on these two books, I plan to write a book on the first 2 decades of the CCJ corporate and commercial case law. I think such a work is necessary for at least one reason. This area of the law does not attract the same kind of attention as constitutional and criminal law do. As a result, the significant work of the court in this area, the area of corporate commercial law, has by and large gone unnoticed. I propose to draw the region's attention to this area of the law by examining the corporate and commercial case law delivered by the court. Finally, I would very much like to teach a few classes in company law and contract law in the undergraduate programs at Cayfield, Mona, and St. Augustine. Thankfully, COVID has taught us that this can be done utilizing modern technology, and hopefully my teaching ambition can be accommodated in these faculties by this method. These are my major plans. However, I understand that my wife and my sons and their families have other plans for me. I understand that I will be visiting my grandchildren in Canada and the US much more regularly than I did while I was not retired. You cannot any longer say that you are tied up in writing a judgment or that you have to attend a meeting, they say to me with some satisfaction. And finally, as I understand it, I will be accompanying the entire family to Barcelona, Spain, to visit the Camp Nou, as Barcelona is the favorite team of a sufficient number of Burgesses to merit a family visit. And so I embark on this journey into retirement. I cannot help but remember the advice Lord Mansfield in the late 18th century gave to a friend about to sail for the West Indies to take up a judicial appointment. Lord Mansfield told him, "Give your judgments, but give no reason. As you are a man of integrity, sound sense, and information, it is more than an even chance that your judgments will be right. But as you are ignorant of the law, it is 10 to 1 that your reasons will be wrong." This was no doubt a metaphor for saying that our courts should give decisions, but leave the task of developing the law to the English courts and the Privy Council. My fervent hope is that in my retirement, I will observe this court, our court, continue to develop law and jurisprudence that is regionally and internationally recognized as outstanding. After all, this is the dream of our ancestors. Thank you, Mr. President.
Colleagues, guests, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to stand and let's give our brother a round of applause. I also invite you, please, to be escorted to our judges' common room on the 3rd floor for some light refreshments. This sitting is now over.